So in this video, I want to talk about making a leap, a huge leap from being an investment banker to being a software engineer. And I made this leap and it was not easy, but I was able to do it, and I'm extremely happy I did it. So I want to talk about why I left, how I left, and some of the pros and cons. So that's going to be the structure of this video. I think you'll find this really useful if you are in finance and you're considering a jump to software engineering. It was the best decision I've made, one of the best decisions I've made, and I think whether or not you actually do it, I think if you're thinking about it, sometimes hearing somebody else's perspective I think could be helpful. At least I wish that there was a video like this that I would have seen when I was considering this switch a while ago. And there was a really good blog post that I read that was super helpful, so I'm hoping to kind of give back in that way. So anyway, let's jump into it. So let's talk about my investment banking background, or my finance background. So I went to University of Wisconsin-Madison. I was a finance major there. I did 2 internships at Robert W. Baird. I think it just goes by Baird now is the branding they're using. Middle market firm. My first internship was my sophomore year. Summer after my sophomore year, I did an internship in private wealth management. And then my junior year, I did an investment banking internship summer after my junior year. And I ended up taking the offer for my junior year. After my junior summer, they gave me a full-time offer, and so then I ended up working as a full-time analyst for a year. You can probably see me shaking. It's freezing outside, and I'm in Wisconsin right now visiting my dad, and it's so cold. I don't feel like idling my car though, so I'm just gonna keep shooting this video and then go. So I don't know, maybe might be some camera shakes that I have to edit out. So anyway, I started my job, worked there for about a year, and I ended up deciding to leave. So why did I leave? Why did I decide to leave? So I decided to leave because I was not happy working that job. It was too many in-person hours. And, ironically, I work a lot of hours now, and I worked a lot of hours as a software engineer, probably not quite the extreme, not quite that many hours, but close. But it was the in-person hours that got to me. It's like legitimately 80 hours a week in the office, maybe more. I would work from 9 a.m., get into the office around 9 or 10 a.m., Monday through Thursday, and I wouldn't leave till about 1 a.m. most days, sometimes 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. even. Sometimes I'd leave early at like midnight or 11 p.m. And then Friday I'd work till like 9 or 10 a.m. to like 8 or 9 p.m. And then Saturday you'd have off, and then Sunday I'd get in around noon and wouldn't leave till like sometimes 6 or 7 p.m., but other times like 11 p.m. or midnight. And that might sound extreme if you're not in investment banking, but if you are, those are the hours, or at least that's what they were back in 2015 when I was an investment banking analyst. So, yeah, if you don't believe me, like go find one of your friends who's in investment banking, and those are the actual hours. Or at least, again, that's what they used to be. I'm long out of the game, so maybe it's different. So it was too many in-person hours for me. That's just the truth. I loved how much money I made. Like right out of school, I made 130 grand, and I loved that. But the hours were just way too much. I was getting out of shape. I didn't have any hobbies. I had 0 hobbies. I was starting to get into some bad habits. Like I started to drink a lot on the weekends, and was like, just like anytime I was free, I wasn't like really feeling like working out. I was eating a bunch of junk food. I was like scrolling on my phone through social media. I didn't have any willpower to like have good habits when I was free, and I was just like turning into a shell of myself. I really didn't like what was happening to my like mind, and yeah, I needed to leave, and so like I decided to leave, and I didn't know what to do to leave. So I still wanted to make money, and so I decided to leave, and I saw these like software engineers making good money but still having a life. I was like, oh, software engineering, it seems like a place where you could make money, you could get pushed, you could grow professionally, but you still had time for life. You still had time for hobbies. And I had a really good friend who was in tech, and he was just crushing it. He was working at Facebook, or Meta now. But it was Facebook then. He's working at Facebook, making good money, and he still seemed to have a life. Like he was still active. He still was doing other stuff outside of work. And so that was also like talking to him a bunch, like really piqued my interest in tech. So I decided to make a leap for software engineering. So and there was one other reason. The other reason was like my favorite part about investment banking was the financial modeling. I loved the little if statements and Excel blocks, the little like, kind of how you put in change up different little input parameters and end up with a different value for the company. I loved that logic, kind of analytical thinking. And that analytical thinking was omnipresent in software engineering, because I'd taken a couple coding classes. I took one coding class in college, and I kind of like messed around a little bit, a couple like beginner coding classes online too. But I took one coding class in college, and I knew if statements. I enjoyed building like little games and stuff. So I knew there was like that analytical thinking just everywhere if I became a coder. So I didn't really want, and I knew that like my favorite part in investment banking, like you have that, but 90% of the time is like answering emails and making PowerPoint slides look pretty and just kind of like operations type work, at least as an analyst. And so I just was like, okay, I think I would actually like the job more. So those are the reasons why I left. So now we'll get into how I left. So how I left is I saved up. My goal was to save up 25 grand, and I ended up saving a little bit more than that. I think I ended up leaving, I had like 30 grand. And so I saved up, and I figured if 25 grand like 3 grand a month would be more than enough for my expenses. And I could just eat rice and beans a bunch. I could eat at home a lot. I could have like a, cheap gym membership, and that would be like my main expense. And and my other expense would be I'd go to a coffee shop and just order like the cheapest coffee every day and like study at a coffee shop. That was my plan. So I quit. I spent 2 months in coffee shops just like trying to build little apps and games and websites and stuff. And I went through 3 books, cover to cover. I would go to a coffee shop every day and treat it like that was my job. I would go there every day and like try to read like 15 to 20 pages of this textbook and try to really do the exercises and whatnot. And I ended up getting through 3 books, short books, but I got through 3 books in that time. I went every single day, including weekends. And then I went to a coding boot camp, and it was more like 3 months. It was like 2.5 months, something like that. And then I went to a coding boot camp in Atlanta, and that was really cool. That was 4 months accelerated. I learned a lot of JavaScript then, a lot of like front-end engineering. And so I studied, went to a coding boot camp in Atlanta called Digital Crafts, which was really good. And so then after going to Digital Crafts, I got this job at a startup called ThinkTech. I worked there for 10 months as a front-end engineer, and I could not keep up, to be honest. And this was my fault 100%. This was not the fault of the company. After getting this job at ThinkTech, I was like, great, I finally made it. By this point, I'd been like studying coffee shops for 2.5 months, 4-month coding boot camp, coding around the clock and applying to jobs. And I finally got this job, and I was like, yes, I have a job. I made it. Now, like, I can work at the job, and just like now I can do hobbies and like get in shape and all these things. And I think these were good ideas, but I took it too far. I started doing too many things at once. Like, I remember signing up for karate classes. I was volunteering at the Humane Society. I signed up for Hindi lessons. I was trying to still play. I was in a tennis league. I was playing basketball a bunch. I was like trying to play guitar, taking guitar lessons. I did too many things because I was so excited about having a life, right? And so I was doing all these things, and I was still going to work. I was showing up on time. It was a 9 to 5, so I would show up on time. I would show up on time, and I would leave at 5. But that's not what it takes to be a software engineer. If you're a beginning software engineer, you need to put in volume. Like, once you're a mid-level or senior level, then you're at a level where you could probably work for 2 hours and do more work in those 2 hours than a junior engineer does in 2 days. But I was a junior engineer working 8 hours, not effectively, like just kind of like showing up and making sure I was doing all, like being on time and all those things, which is great. But I wasn't spending, like, as a junior engineer, what I should have been doing was spending a bunch of time on the nights and weekends, figuring out how to, like, learning the technology, understanding the product, building little prototypes in the technology that the product was using. All these things I should have been doing. I didn't do those though, and so I was just kind of like working. Got laid off after 10 months. Again, that's totally my fault for not putting in the volume. And so then I was like, okay, I need to put in volume. I'm doing way too many things. So I stopped taking karate lessons. I stopped Hindi. I still went to the gym because I think that's always a good thing to have in the mix. But I stopped doing a lot of the things that the like extra things. And I still went to the gym and I stayed with music lessons. Those were the two that I kept. And so then I in those 2 months, I took another computer science class online, Harvard CS50, which is very, very, very useful. It was extremely useful. I'm so glad I took that class. And so it's online, it's free, it's very high quality. They probably still have it. So I took that class, and then I ended up applying to a bunch of jobs again. I got 3 offers, one at Home Depot, one at this company called AppRiver, it's a cybersecurity company, and one at CNN, the large media organization. So I ended up taking CNN's offer, and I worked there for 5.5 years, and that changed the game for me. During that time, I really put in a lot of work. I grew from a very junior engineer to, by the time I left, so now I left very recently so that I could take what I'm calling a creative break, where I make YouTube videos and write songs for as long as I can. I'm trying to just really go after these 2 areas and see what happens. So anyway, that's what I'm doing now. But for 5.5 years, I really just like went after music. Sorry, I really went after software engineering, and I was reading JavaScript books in my free time, building little things, spending extra time, and I went from a very junior engineer to I got promoted to a mid-level, and by the time I left, I was up for promotion for a senior engineer. I was very close to becoming a senior engineer. A lot of my managers were telling me that I was performing at a senior engineer level. And so I was very close. I think if I would have stayed for another 6 months, I would have probably gotten that bump. But I ended up leaving. So anyway, but the point is, like, I got, multiple raises and promotions over those 5.5 years, and really actually leveled up my game as a software engineer. So when I started at CNN, I was making 80 grand, and then I left making 130 grand, which is cool, over 5.5 years. I think if I could have pushed it harder and made more, and I think if I would have gotten that senior engineer promotion, I would have ended up with more. But that's okay. So that's okay. So anyway, that's the why and the how of my journey. And I want to talk about the pros and the cons. So let's start with the cons first. So the cons are money, right? I think like I was making 130 grand at 22. I got a 10 grand signing bonus, 85 grand salary, and then I received a 35 grand bonus because I was mid bucket. I think the top bucket guys even got more, guys and girls even got more. So I made 130 grand at 23 years old, and then by the time I left CNN, I was still making. It took me a long time in software to get to 130 grand. Now I think if I would have stayed like 6 more months, I would have had a higher salary than that. And I think if I would have studied algorithms and done like cracking the coding interview and tried to like apply to another tech company, switched to a tech company after like 3 years, I could have gotten a higher salary. But that's just crazy. Investment bankers get paid a lot. So I think, I had to take a big hit up front, right, to switch to software engineering, because my first job in tech, at that startup, I was making 65 grand. So I literally halved my salary. I also halved my hours, though. So, I mean, that's interesting. So anyway, but that's the biggest con, was money. I think if I would have stayed in investment banking for like 5 or 6 or 7 years, I would be making shit tons of money by now. You know what I mean? So that's the biggest con. It's just money. Pros are unlimited. This is like, the pros are unlimited. Like, I have so much more vitality now than I was when I was working in investment banking, and I just enjoyed the software engineering job way more. Like, it's so fun, it's so fun to build stuff. It's so fun to build stuff and to grow and to like learn new tech. It's so fun, and like building little games and things in your free time. To me, that is like a lot more fun than and finance is fun too. I still love finance. But to me, like, building something, actually building something and learning new tech is way more fun, and you're rewarded for falling into a deep flow state, which in investment banking you are, but there's just so many emails, like, and so much communication that it's like you don't. you don't get as much time to do like that flow state work, you know? And there's still a lot of that in software, but you get more time for that flow state work, which makes me really happy. And so the actual work was a lot better. The lifestyle is better. You know, at CNN, by the time I left, it wasn't a typical 9 to 5. I was probably working more like 9 to 7 or like 7 to 5, you know, because I would always try to sign on like an hour or two early most days, or at least some days, and try to do like a little extra work, or a weekend I would sign on for like 3 or 4 hours, because I was always trying to get that like extra, that like flow state work in. But that's still plenty of time, you know. I still had time to lift. I still had time to play my guitar, release songs. I still had time to hang out with Vanessa. I still had a lot of time for life, you know, hang out, develop friendships, travel all over the place, you know, taking like you know, at CNN, you could take like a month off of PTO a year. There's a very, very, very generous PTO policy. So at investment banking, there's no way. Like, I remember taking a few days off, and people would be like, like they would go, "Oh, you're a first year. You shouldn't be taking time off." Like, maybe it's changed, but that was the attitude. Like, people were like, "You don't take time off as a first year. It's not what you're supposed to do." But in software engineering, they're like, "Yeah, take time off." At least at CNN, the policy was take time off, you know, and travel. So I got to go to a lot of cool places that I would not trade. You know, in my 20s, yeah, I would have made more money, but I got to travel and pursue all these things, right? I got to create and release multiple songs on Spotify. I got to get a lot better at different languages other than English. So I did not trade it. Like, the time back was really awesome. So those are the pros, and then the actual job was a lot more fun. So anyway, I'll wrap up this video, but like that was my change over from investment banking to software. I hope this is helpful to somebody, and maybe I'll make a more in-depth video, but that's what it was. It's the, you know, recap, you know, why I left, because I just wanted to enjoy my life more. How I left: coffee shop for a few months, coding boot camp, got a job as a front-end engineer, got laid off, took another course, got into CNN. Cons: probably would have made more money if I stayed in investment banking. Pros: just my life is, other than money, is like better in so many different ways, and I think I'm going to figure out how to make I think you can, even in software, if I played my cards slightly differently, or I think, you know, the path I'm on, I'm going to find a way to make some good money. So I feel like, even though that's a con, I think it's still able to figure it out. I think there's still ways to make the money of an investment banker without the lifestyle of an investment banker, or make close, you know, so close enough where it doesn't really matter as much. So those are my thoughts. Again, I don't want to like act like I hate investment banking. I met some just phenomenal people working at Baird. Like, I'm talking about cream of the crop type people. I'm talking about people who can work just so hard and are able to, and are just like really well groomed and articulate and engaged in conversation and hardworking and just like really, really top tier people. So I don't regret that time, and it really taught me like what a work ethic is, like what it means to just go all in on something. So I don't regret that time at all. I think it was awesome. I'm very grateful for that experience. And if people who are in it, I think they're high hats are off to them. Like, they have crazy work ethics, and they're honestly some of the most like disciplined people I've met, and just really just have a really strong work ethic, you know. And they cultivate a lot of skills, from both technical skills. They cultivate, you know, just how to like synthesize, how to explain what a company does and how it makes money and how much it's worth. They're able to convey that information in a very, very succinct way through a PowerPoint deck. Eventually, if you stay in banking, you get really good at sales, at selling companies. So I think there's a lot of really useful skills, not just like technical skills, but meta skills, you know, like working hard and sales, and how to write good emails, and how to like navigate this space of finance. I think there's a lot of really good skills and a lot of really good jobs that open up to you from investment banking. So I don't want to make this video and make you think that I don't like that investment banking is all gloom, because I think there's a lot to it. But for me, leaving was the best thing I could have done. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give me a like and subscribe if you did. I am new to YouTube and this stuff would help. Again, I'm on a creative break now. This is my kind of second large move that I made, switching from, so I was, invest in finance to software engineering switched to a software engineer for over 6 years. And now I'm working on YouTube and music full time, and it's been fun. So yeah, would appreciate like and subscribe. And if this video helped you, let me know in the comments too. If there's like anything else you want me to answer about my switch, because I'm happy to do that. All right, I'll talk to y'all later, and take care.
People milling around that same no ordinary bench that I'm sitting on.